So for you expecting to see Chris Myers, you will here in a moment. Chris, he had a pretty busy schedule with us. It was amazing that he carved out time to talk. So if you want to skip ahead a couple minutes, and then you can see the start of that. But so Kate, almost all the way through, realized that she forgot to plug her laptop in, and her battery fell to 5% as we were wrapping. Unfortunately, she did not disappear on us for the end of the episode, but that was almost an oops. So please, Kate, explain how you forgot to plug your laptop in.
I stole the cable to plug in the Pro controller for my Switch so me and my friend could play Smash Brothers in the living room because I didn't charge my controller.
Very professional move.
I know. But hey, I lost every single round, I'll be honest.
Well, I hope you kids had fun with your Atari video game box.
It's a bit more advanced now.
Okay, what's the next one?
The NES.
The NES, yes, Nintendo, yes.
Yeah.
Mario Brothers with your little rectangular control and your two buttons, and
and you just fight each other.
You eat mushrooms and spit fire.
Yeah, it's so much fun. Did I tell you I've been playing Mario Odyssey like every night for the past 2 weeks?
I don't know what Mario Odyssey is.
It's pretty much every version of Mario put into one version. And so you have like the 2D from the NES, and then you have N64 portals, and you have all these other things, and it's a lot of fun.
That's interesting.
And I'm a nerd.
And somehow you found a Nintendo Switch, which the rest of us in America cannot.
Every morning I was checking GameStop, Amazon, Target, everywhere.
Well, thanks to you, GameStop stock is through the roof.
I don't think that's the reason, but okay. So since we're done making fun of me, I've just decided that we're going to make fun of you. And for all of our listeners, I just want you to know DJ is not a stalker. He just does a crazy amount of research. So when he comes off as a stalker throughout the episode, which I was thinking the whole time is, oh my God, he's stalkerish.
Time out. You know what? I have a philosophy on this, and it's not stalking. It's called doing your homework. I was talking to somebody about this last night, and there are 2 key points here that I'm actually pulling up the text because I think I worded it pretty well. Number 1, we here are, you're about to see the interview of one of the greatest sports interviewers of our generation. He's won an Emmy Award. He's interviewed countless people in the sports world, covered major events. Like, you have to be prepared. You need to know who you're talking to. And that's actually number 2. The key to being a good interviewer is know who you're talking to.
I actually read the notes for once.
Well, I spent plenty of time preparing those notes, so I'm glad you read them for once. And didn't,
might have been 5 minutes before, but I read them.
And you didn't vandalize, I didn't put it up in a way to vandalize it that I read, like, put DJ sucks in the middle of a sentence that I Ron Burgundy. I'm better than that.
No one's ever done that before. I have no idea what you're talking about. That was like first year crap that I would do.
You have attempted it on more than one occasion. You have not been successful. So.
I have grown since then.
Well, thank you. So number 1 is know who you're interviewing. The second thing, be prepared for the person you're interviewing is number 1. Number 2 is know who you're interviewing. And one of my goals when I interview someone is I want a reaction out of them, like, how the hell did you know that? And I kind of got that out of him when I kind of turned the tables and talked about an obscure 10-second movie cameo from 20 years ago. That did get kind of a reaction out of him. So I'm going to, even though he didn't say, how did you know about that? But you could see it on his face that caught him off guard a little bit. So
don't pat yourself on the back too hard.
Don't
break your arm. Yeah. So now that we're done talking about us, should we probably jump into the interview?
Yes. So without further ado, you've seen him on the World Series. You've seen him covering play-by-play and on the sidelines for Fox NFL. He's covered the Olympics, the Masters. He's been on Sports Center. But most recently, you'll know him for his time in the Hollywood Hotel on Fox Sports. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Myers. All right, we are joined by Chris Myers of Fox Sports, the Marquee Network, the Chris Myers interview, and many other things. Chris, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. No, DJ, Kate's good to be on talking broadcasting, sports, and everything else you want to talk about.
Looking through at what you've done and what you're doing, it just I don't know how you have any time, period. So I mean, it's just to squeeze out time for us. Just we're really appreciative of that.
No, my pleasure. There's always, you can always, especially with the virtual way to talk to people now. You can set up. It's almost like a radio interview with a camera from your home or your backyard or wherever. So in between travel or assignments, you can always make time if something's important. And when you said what this is about, or beyond my curve and other people in broadcasting, I'm always interested in helping people who will have an interest in sports broadcasting and want to find their way into the business that's ever growing and ever changing. It really is a great industry.
So let's just jump right in from the very beginning. I mean, I've read through your bio, I've done all my homework. I see that as a teenager, you had a radio show and interviewed people of the caliber of like Don Shula and Muhammad Ali. But what was the point in your life when you realized that broadcasting, or even more specifically, sports broadcasting was what you wanted to do with your life?
Yeah, I think when I was younger, I had a passion for sports, coming from a big family, and everybody had their interests. But I think the combination of, we'll just call it media for purposes of, radio, TV, and now you have different ways you go. But that combination of talking about sports where other people could hear, or I could get feedback from what they were thinking, or describing sports. I didn't necessarily think play-by-play or in my early stages, but that's kind of what fascinated me, the combination of the two, talking sports at school, and then, doing the public address announcements and all that kind of stuff, and then getting in radio, and then and then the business grew and grew, and TV and sports. So I think that I was going to go down that path. I had chances to go into news and do some other things, but sports to me was always fun. And the score at the end, of winner, loser, and you talk to both and find the enjoyment of having success and the frustration of getting there and not necessarily winning. So when that hit me, through the years, it was just always a path I was going to take. There was just different ways to go about it. Different things came up. There were always obstacles, but I stayed on it because it was something that I really enjoyed doing. So it didn't feel like it was a job. It felt like it was almost like a hobby that I could end up making a career out of.
What type of obstacles did you encounter along your way?
Well, a couple of those, you're too young to be able to do this. You don't have experience, the things that you hear in other businesses and you still hear today. So I just, you had to find ways. Okay, so if I want to be on the air, but I'm too young to be on the air, then if I can produce some segments or for TV or something for other people and show them that skill, eventually with an internship or something like that, I can get on the air, and then I'll see how good I am on the air to show them, despite age or experience. I'll get the experience. However, I have to get it. That was one thing that kind of stood out. It's funny. I had this little from birth, kind of like a birthmark scar on my forehead. And later, when I got through college and had a tape to get on TV, some people were like, "Well, I don't know if makeup will cover that up. Maybe you should have some kind of surgery." It was a real candid rejection. Kind of like, "Wow, I didn't know it was that distracting." And I talked to my sister, my oldest sister, about that. She was, supported me in going after my fashion. She said, no, you just be who you are, and people accept that. And a little makeup, TV is all about, you're wearing, you're putting an earpiece in, you're wearing makeup, you're combing your hair. So, it's a little bit of an illusion thing anyway. So are you good at what, you're delivering the sports and the information. So that gave me a little bit of, we talk about an obstacle of the confidence at a young age when the people in the business are telling you something, and then you have people that know you saying you can do this. So I think that's an important element to have as you go forward.
So I have to turn back real quick on interviewing Muhammad Ali, and obviously the man was a very intimidating figure, both in the ring and personality wise. What goes through a teenager's mind interviewing Muhammad Ali?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I would go from in Hollywood, Florida, I'd go from my geometry class, whatever it was, height in with math, and I wasn't very good at math, but that's one thing that helped in sports. But I would leave there, get my tape recorder, and it was for WKAT radio in Miami Beach, a 5,000-watt station that had a nightly talk show. And I was, at this point, I had my own show on the weekends when I was 16. But at this point, I was just kind of doing field interviews when they needed it. I'd go out with a tape recorder, do an interview, and then they put it on the show. So I had to run from there to the Fontainebleau Hotel, Miami Beach, and it was a kind of a press conference with Ali. So it wasn't a one-on-one or anything like that. But there were these writers and everybody, and I had longer hair and that type of thing. And I just, I didn't realize that I knew he was Ali, but I didn't realize till later in life and the success he had that this guy was the greatest in terms of. But at the interview, he talked, making fun of his opponent, and I forgot. I asked a question. I wish I had the old tape, the audio tape. But the two things that stood out, he was. Some question asked about his opponent. He said, "You're not as dumb as you look, kid." And because so I think that was a compliment. But it got everybody laughing. Ali, if he could get people, he was working the room. So, and then he said something like, "Well, don't be this before wrestlers use the line. Don't be a fool. Stay in school, whatever you do," or something like that. Because I said I just came from school or whatever, and I'm the reporter. So I guess what I learned then was that I was not. This is something important. You respect the people you're interviewing, but you should never really be intimidated by them. And still to this day, sometimes you run into people in a certain situation that can be intimidating, whether they want to be or not. But you shouldn't allow that as the interviewer. So that's how that one unfolded. And then later, when I had my own show, I ended up going out to the Dolphins practice facility, and after practice, interviewing Don Shula, who was a very straightforward guy, but a guy who said, "Hey, I got time for 2 questions," and if you started asking a third, he'd look at his watch, and that was a polite way of him saying, "I'm walking away after this one, pal." So you learn things early. But my approach really to doing interviews through the years, and because if you start with guys like that, think about that, DJ. You start with those guys, and after that, so it's no problem to interview Michael Jordan or Tom Brady or whomever. So, but I always thought treat the real famous guy almost like a regular guy, respectfully, and you treat the regular guy, the athlete maybe who isn't a superstar, like he's a superstar or going to be one, and that usually balances out. And I think both people, both sides, when you're interviewing them, seem to respond favorably.
Okay.
So you started doing sports broadcasting in high school, it sounds like.
Right.
How did you progress through your education?
Yeah, well, I was calling into a radio station. That's how I got the gig when I was supposed to be doing my homework in high school. And I would be Chris from Miami, and then I'd call back and be Duke from North Miami, and I'd agree with my earlier call so I could get him. So I could get on the air more. Yeah, it's funny. And then they had fan night where they invited some people down, their regular callers, to the studio, and I had to tell them I was the same guy. And so from there, they said, "Wow, all right, you want to, maybe weekends you could do something behind the scenes or this," before I even got my license. And then eventually I got on the air doing a Saturday call-in show for a couple hours when I was still in high school. But I wanted to transition, even though I was enjoying the radio and was hoping to get a full-time radio gig. Because I had to make a living going from high school and going into college. I went to a junior college, Miami-Dade Junior College in Miami, and wanted to go and eventually FIU, Florida International University, but I wanted to transition into television. And I wasn't sure how to do that from radio. I mean, I would see TV people at the news conferences and stories I was covering in Miami. So that helped. And also getting an internship at the time through the colleges allowed me to, while I was working radio, to go to a TV station and behind the scenes learn about their production and writing and things like that. And so eventually, that was the hard part of getting on the air in TV. And it was a TV station in Miami, WTVJ, that had a weekend opening and had heard me on the radio and saw that I covered things in Miami and South Florida. And so they said, hey, I think it was only 21 at the time when they put me on, or 20. And so I hadn't even finished college. But they said, we think you can do TV, you want to do it. And I had to put together an audition tape at my college with kind of, makeshift desk and setup. We didn't have the kind of production value that most colleges have today. So it all kind of helped, and that was the main ticket. But you can go to college for things, but nothing beats the experience. And I think that's what I would make the point. Even if you're going to a school and you're getting to do all these things, try to get involved with the local or some radio, TV in the summer, so that you get the real thing or around the real thing.
So before you made the jump to the national stage into ESPN, you had a couple local stops. I believe it was Miami and then New Orleans.
Right.
And tell us how did your work in local TV prepare you for taking that step into the national broadcasting through ESPN and ultimately Fox?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it was tremendous value. You think even though when you're young and you've studied and you've met, you think but until you actually are hands-on and at those local stations, the priority too is the local news, the local sports, in this case in Miami and New Orleans. But I always had in my mind, I wanted to think big, because when people put on whatever channel sportscast for that station, they want the local sports, but they want a big time feel to it. So it really taught me, though, about reporting value, going out doing stories, some stories that, maybe were high school or a local soccer team, and they didn't seem as big, on the outside as if you were going to go to do a story on the Dolphins, or the Saints and that. But if you treated the story that it was big and gave it that big feel in the way that you set it up, ask questions, work with your editor, or in any way you wanted to approach it, I think it came out a little bit better. And that's, I think, what help people notice my work that eventually got me to ESPN and then Fox at the national scale. And I think I wanted to anchor, and I did a little bit of that too on weekends as a sports anchor. But I think if you could, especially starting out, Kate asked about education, and if you could do multiple things, and try to do them all well, eventually you'll find that right lane, or somebody will find a way to use you in your best spot, reporter, anchor, co-anchor, whatever, play-by-play. There's so many different things that I think you'll be better off down the road. But those were great, and I worked with some really good people in Miami and in New Orleans who behind the scenes, and you pay attention to that. Don't just do your job. You need to, not that you have to do everybody else's job, but I think you should know their names and know who they are and what they look for, whether it's an audio technician or someone who operates the camera. So those things come into play sometimes, even at a network level, because things go wrong and equipment goes down in a situation, teleprompter, and you still have to try and do the job as best you can. So that really did set the table. But also, I think, my view was to put in a little extra effort so that I was prepared for the next big opportunity that came along.
Did you have one point in your career where you were like, I've made it, I've accomplished what I want to do?
I still, it's funny, I still think I have more to do. And I'm always, is that old expression about once you think you've made it, then you're going the other way. You won't make anything further out of it. And that's okay when you get to a point when people want to sit back and relax. But I think there were layers of first getting into radio, like we talked about. And then when you asked about getting into television, that was like the next layer. And some people are satisfied and enjoy that life of being a local anchor for a number of years in a place that they like. I was, you talked about, when you've made it, I was like, well, I want to get to as ESPN was unfolding and Fox Sports, the network was growing. It's like, these are places I'd like to work, because I see how good the product is and the people they have. So I think getting to that level was a sense of making it. But then when you get there, you want to stay there, and you also want to do a really good job there so that the viewers and the people you work for are satisfied and will have you around to do other things. And so I think that's the thing that I've enjoyed about the business through it all, because you start out being a reporter or anchor, and then you get to a place like Fox where you can do play-by-play, or I can host the Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show, or cover an NFL game, a Super Bowl, World Series. And so there are, I think, for yourself, create new challenges. And that was one thing I meant to mention in the local sports broadcasting when that was asked a moment ago, that I always had an approach. It's kind of corny, but it's just my way of firing myself up, that every night's the Super Bowl. In other words, every story, every broadcast, we know that it's not. But when I got to do the Super Bowl, it actually was. But I think if you approach it with that kind of big time feel and appreciation, and don't take it lightly. As this isn't a throwaway story. Or I think you're going to do a better job on each story, and that'll help you grow as a broadcaster. And I think the viewers can appreciate that. So there's still things to accomplish out there, but it's been great to be to work at a place like Fox Sports and do the variety of things that they offer their viewers.
How do you keep yourself motivated? Because I mean, it's you get into the summer when it kind of slows down, and it's baseball's going on. It's the middle of a long season. How do you keep yourself motivated and treat it every night like a world? It's the World Series or the Super Bowl.
Yeah, because football and NASCAR are those the once a week events, kind of the way so that's a little bit easier. Then you get into baseball, where there's a series of games, or you're doing different kinds of highlight shows. I'll be doing some work, obviously, with the Cubs' new channel, Marquee Sports Network at Have. They find Cubs have their own channel now, which is great, and some Fox baseball, although that schedule is a little bit limited with some of the other things. So I think, and we asked about doing so many different things. I think that's a form of motivation, is that I might, this is for me, get bored with just doing one sport all the time every year. I like them all, and for different reasons, and some are a little bit more favorable than others. But I think that motivates me to finish the NFL season. Now there's NASCAR. I got an update on talking about moving different racetracks, and the drivers have changed here. Okay, so NASCAR, now we got baseball. The season is coming. We're going to play a full schedule this year in theory. Get to know the players, the free agents, that type. So that kind of keeps, at least from my standpoint, keeps me interested, as if I was a fan of following the game. When I was a kid, that's kind of what I did from sport to sport when I wasn't working and getting paid for it. So that, I think, in itself is kind of a constant motivation. And so you like it, and if you like something, it's not really a job. You think about it all the time. You want to do it all the time. So as I said, it's kind of a hobby that turned into a job, and it still is that. It can be on days off. I still find myself watching games or critiquing broadcasts, things like that.
So real quick before we get into NASCAR, you've been on the air and covered some pretty significant points in history. There was the Bay Area, the World Series earthquake. There was the Olympic Park bombing in '96 that was mentioned. You interviewed O.J. Simpson after his murder trial. I believe that was the first interview he gave. Like, what goes through your mind? Like, these are obviously major life-changing events for people. Like, what goes through your mind that, like, this is a major event in history, and I'm the person in front of the camera covering this? Like, does that change your approach at all? Does it even come to your mind that this is a major event?
Not until after you've done it do you look back at it. When you're doing it in the moment. We were there with the Earthquake World Series, for example, with ESPN, with the A's and the Giants. You're there to cover baseball, and then this happens, an earthquake, and so you change a little bit. You become kind of you have your reporter skills, but it's now a bigger story than a baseball, a World Series game. It's a life-altering, city-changing story, a tragic event, similar to Dale Earnhardt crashing at the Daytona 500 and dying, being there. And then even the Olympics, going through, we didn't know at the time, at the bombing in Atlanta, that I was down in the middle of it as the reporter. You didn't know if more people were going to get hurt, if there were other bombs. I mean, that uncertain area. So I think at the time, you don't really have time to think about, boy, this is big. You just click into, at least with me, you click into the mode that you need to do so it's not about sports, fun, and games. Now it's about who's safe and who's not, and do the Olympics go on, or the World Series, and in this case, or in NASCAR, how does that change safety going forward in the sport when you lose your headline star? So and the O.J. Simpson interview was special because it was unique. The first live interview after both the wrongful death and the murder trial. That one I had time to prepare for. Some people said don't do it. It was a little bit controversial. So that had a little bit more of, and I tried to kind of block that out, almost like a player tells you, hey, the Super Bowl is just another game. Well, it's not just another game, but you have a little more time, you have a little more, preparation, what's at stake, and so that one felt a little bit different in terms of that. But I really try to it's not about, you don't make it about yourself. It wasn't about me. It was about covering what was going on and interviewing the people that people wanted to hear from. And I think that keeps you kind of laser focused. But it is interesting to look back on some of those sports events that turned into news events. And then there was also some fun moments, to be there when the Red Sox finally broke through and won the World Series. And, to be there when Tom Brady came back and interview him on the field for the network broadcast at Fox when he rallied to beat the Falcons in the Super Bowl in overtime, the greatest Super Bowl comeback. So there's some of the fun sports ones, and then those that supersede that. But not until you sit back and look at what happened do you really have time to go, wow, that was some pretty heavy stuff there.
I'm going to do a quick lighter moment, and I'll hand it over to Kate when we transition to NASCAR. So right after you joined Fox, you had a brief cameo in one of my favorite movies, Rat Race, where you're on screen for maybe 10 seconds and make fun of Cuba Gooding Jr., who plays a football referee and botches a coin toss. Like, how does one get approached to say, hey, can you make a 10-second appearance in a movie essentially as yourself? Like, how does that come along?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you like Rat Race. It's taken from an old movie my parents' family used to watch. It's a mad world. Right? If you ever go back and see that on Turner Classic, you can see how they modernize it. And look at the interesting people that were in Rat Race, right? The different personalities. Something like that comes from somebody. They're doing the movie, and they say, hey, we need to get somebody on a monitor, and one of the sports guys to do this announcing who can do it. I think Kevin Frazier and I ended up doing little snippets. They call us or Fox and say, can you, and we're willing to do it. You get the SAG after fees or whatever, and they cover you there. It's fun. And you don't know it when you're doing it at the time. They don't tell you about everything else in the movie. You just know kind of what it's about. And then you see, and it certainly took longer than 10 seconds because they have all their takes and they pick the best one. But it's funny, I've been at a few other, I was in Volcano, which I was all excited about with Tommy Lee Jones, being a reporter in a grocery store. But I was there and did all these different kind of fake live reports, not as a sportscaster, as a newscaster. And it's funny, I auditioned one time in a movie and they wanted a sportscaster, and I came in to do it. They said, no, you're not real, you don't fit that part. We think you could be a newscaster. So I go, all right, okay, whatever. But I did we did all these takes, and I think I was in that for like 8 seconds with, when you go to the theater and you're watching, you think, wow, did I make the cut? And then Joanna Man is another one that has a lot of different announcers I think Kenny Albert is in that, and quite a few others. So those are a lot of bit parts, not that I ever wanted to be or could be an actor, but when people want a certain sports guy or sports voice, actually an interesting story with Any Given Sunday, the movie that Oliver Stone did, where Al Pacino's the coach. I forget exactly how it happened, but I get a call one time from a casting agent. I'm at home, and he says, "Hey, this is Chris Myers. I guess we want to check your voice out for a football voiceover in a movie with Oliver Stone or something." I said, "Yeah, right." Okay. And they said, "No, hold on, Oliver, are you there?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm here. Let me listen." And so they said to me, "Can you do a little play-by-play for us?" And at the time, I hadn't really been doing play-by-play, and so I said, "Yeah, well, they said just act like you're calling a game and radio." So I just wanted this thing, I think I think Emmett Smith or whatever. But they used that, and I never saw anybody else. They just had me get out of a sound studio, and they used me to fill in the background of. There's a couple of times in the movie where the game is being called on a TV or a radio in the background, and they used my voice on that, which was kind of cool. So it's a funny part of the business that comes with sportscasting.
So we're running short on time, so I do want to ask 2 quick questions.
Okay.
If you were a car, what type of car would you be?
I'm a sedan kind of guy. I'm not a sports car guy. I'm not a station wagon. I grew up with a big family, and I like cars that have great pickup. They don't necessarily go fast, but I like a Mercedes Benz, maybe the S Class, something classy luxury, but has some style and pickup. Sedan guy, if that describes it better than anything else.
Okay, and since NASCAR is starting up for 2021, anything you're looking forward to?
Yeah, well, I love the schedule. They've changed it. We started the 500. Super Speedway had a road course. We had done last week the Miami, Homestead, Miami. Now it's Vegas, then Phoenix. So we have a mile and a half to then a mile track. I like that they've altered the schedule, and I give NASCAR credit for adjusting for weather and fans as we ease back into having more fans at the track. I think it's producing. We've seen, at least in the first three races, three kind of upset winners. So you're going to have your mainstay guys, your storylines. It's great having Michael Jordan in the sport, working with Bubba Wallace as part ownership with Denny Hamlin. And there are some young drivers rising to the top as well that I think will be worth watching. But I think it's a little bit more of a wide open season with the schedule that should entertain fans.
So go ahead, and I'm going to close this out real quick with a last question. So I keep this on my desk. I've had this for a long time.
Oh, I know that car. All right.
Yes, I've got this is the NASCAR 50th anniversary Jeff Gordon, the Rainbow Warrior paint.
Rainbow Warrior, yes.
Yeah, so Jeff Gordon, it doesn't fit me anymore, but as a kid I have the Rainbow Warrior like jacket that the wear. So what's it like sitting next to Jeff Gordon, knowing this guy was a legend of the sport? What is that dynamic like?
Yeah, you even got a little bit of the mustache, the younger Jeff Gordon, before the mullet, I think, going. By the way, he's great. He's still, he's still, I think, a legend in broadcasting, emerging, because with NFL, I've worked with different guys, Troy Aikman and Daryl Johnston, and in baseball, I worked with a Frank Thomas or some of the really good. But Jeff, you hit it. Not only a four-time champion Hall of Famer, but what he did to help branch out after Dale Earnhardt to NASCAR, taking a little more from the Southern roots image to a East Coast, West Coast, across the country, and anybody can be, to be a gearhead, to be a sports fan, and a root for drivers. It's amazing too how impressive a driver he was, and a smart guy, and very much a businessman thinking kind of guy, and a great sense of humor. When you hang out with him, he's very casual. You wouldn't think you're sitting next to a Hall of Famer and such a great driver. He loves rap music. In fact, on the pre-race show, Race Day coming up for Vegas this Sunday on Fox, he's got this habit, this hobby that I think he loves music and rap. To be a DJ, like in a club and work that's really what he would love to have done. And we're going to tease him about that in the show, because he also has done some crazy music dancing. So anyway, that tells you something about how cool his personality is. Awesome. And he's terrific. And I think he's really, if you listen to the broadcast, he's really tuned into what drivers today are up against and what they have to do to be successful. So he's a Hall of Fame driver. I think he's on his way to becoming a Hall of Fame announcer.
I'm going to come across him one of these days. I almost met him when I was a kid. I showed up to the line was like 2 miles long.
Well, if you come to a Fox race when we're there, because I'm working with him and Clint Boyer, who's so entertaining on the pre-race show, I'll make sure you get a chance to say hi to me. Set that up for you.
I'm 40 minutes from Phoenix Raceway, believe it or not.
Okay, so maybe we could do that in Phoenix then. All right.
Yes,
you send me a note. We'll try to make that work for you.
Yeah, I don't think with the situation, I don't think this year's not an option, but next year.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I wasn't thinking about that.
Next year, I'll have to shoot you up next year, but it's been a few years since I've been to that race, but I'll need to get out there and say hello.
We'll work on that for you. You're right, Dave. Some fans are slowly coming back, but it's quite a process, and there is a limitation. Even our pit reporters, who do a great job to get down on the track, they don't even have the access that they used to have to get information because of the pandemic safety guidelines, which we all have to follow until we make it through. So, but we'll work on that.
So last question, we'll wrap it up. To the kids who are trying to break into the business, what's your piece of advice to them?
Well, if they listen to what we all talked about from the beginning, there's different ways, and there are so many opportunities now with team websites and social media, different ways that you can make yourself known, things like this, a podcast, an interview. But I think if you are going to go to a college to study, make sure you're involved as early as you can be in an internship program. I think you just learn so much that way and really apply yourself. And I think people see you, what your strength is and what you might need to work on or have to do. And just look, it's the old basic, any part of a job that my father taught me. Show up on time, get along with people, and try to always do a little more than the job requires, and that'll get you through. And then you need breaks, and you need people that'll help you along the way. But those opportunities will come if you work hard. And don't give up on your dream if you can. I mean, be realistic about it. But if you stay at it, I mean, things can happen. I mean, that's kind of my general advice, at least. And I've lived it, so I know it can happen.
All right, appreciate it. Again, Chris Myers, Fox Sports Marquee Network, the Chris Myers interview. Check him out this Sunday from Vegas at the Hollywood Hotel. Chris, do you want to plug social media or anything else before you go?
Yeah, no, that you mentioned. I appreciate people watching whatever we're doing on Fox and Marquee Sports Network. Just Instagram, it's Chris Myers Fox, and _Chris Myers on Twitter. I always love hearing from fans, critiques, observations, and things that they like to comment on or talk about. It's kind of like having our own worldly talk show. So thanks for that opportunity.
Sure. Yeah, thank you again. This has been an absolute treat.
All right, you guys take care. Kate, DJ, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for joining us. All right, take
All
care.
right, take care. Bye.